Truckers remember mile markers the way most people remember birthdays. I remember one that shouldn't exist. Mile 214 is where I realized the inspection ticket sitting on my dashboard carried tomorrow's date. I'd been hauling refrigerated produce east toward North Dakota on a late fall run. Around 11 that night, my GPS locked up for a few seconds, just as I passed an active way station. By the time it refreshed, I'd already missed the entrance. The next exit appeared almost immediately, marked by an old sign that simply read, Way Station. It looked worn, but the lights were on, so I figured it was some overflow inspection site. The place felt older than anything still operating. Faded paint peeled from the concrete building. The floodlights buzzed softly, attracting almost no insects. 3 DOT officers stood outside without saying much. They weren't unfriendly. If anything, they were unusually calm. Evening, one said. Pull around. Standard inspection. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered every few seconds. One officer checked my paperwork while another walked around the truck with a flashlight. He paused beside my left steer tire. Keep an eye on this one. It looks fine, I answered. It does. That was all he said. Another officer looked at my refrigeration unit. Don't let the trailer idle too long after mile 214. I frowned. Why that mile? He met my eyes for a second before writing something on a clipboard. You'll understand. When they handed me the inspection ticket, it showed no violations, only handwritten notes. Left steer tire. Reefer shutdown near MM214. Do not stop after midnight. Do not open your passenger door. I almost laughed until I noticed the inspection date. It was tomorrow. I pointed at it. Your printer's wrong. The officer looked down without changing expression. No, drive safe. I pulled back onto the interstate. My electronic logbook never showed the inspection. It was as if I'd never left the highway. I called dispatch. You guys ever hear of an old way station east of Miles City? There was a pause. Antonio, that station closed around 15 years ago. I thought he was joking. I'm looking at the inspection ticket. You sure you aren't talking about the active scale back there? No, he stayed quiet. There isn't another one. The road stretched empty beneath the headlights. Just me, the trailer, and endless prairie disappearing into darkness. I kept glancing at the ticket. Midnight came and went. About 20 minutes later, the steering wheel jerked violently. The left steer tire exploded. I managed to ease the truck onto the shoulder without rolling it. As traffic rushed past, I stared at the shredded tire illuminated by my flashlight. Exactly the first warning. After replacing it, I got moving again, trying to convince myself it was coincidence. The dashboard clock rolled past 1:30. A few miles later, the refrigeration alarm screamed. The reefer shut itself down. I coasted onto the shoulder and checked my location. Mile marker 214. The number on the green sign reflected in my headlights. Exactly where the officer had written it. I restarted the unit 3 times before it finally came back online. That's when I noticed the last warning again. Do not open your passenger door. The highway had become strangely quiet. No trucks, no cars, even the wind had settled. Then headlights appeared behind me. Not one vehicle, 2. One slowed. The other kept moving. A woman stumbled out of the darkness between them. She looked covered in gray road dust, breathing hard as she ran toward my cab. She wasn't screaming wildly. She sounded exhausted. Please, she pounded on the passenger door. Please let me in. He's following me. Every instinct I had said to unlock it. She looked terrified. I reached toward the switch, then saw the inspection ticket lying across my dash. Do not open your passenger door. I hesitated. The woman kept pounding. Her face stayed hidden beneath tangled hair. Then something felt wrong. She never looked behind her, not once. Someone running from danger checks. She didn't. She only watched me, waiting. The silence outside seemed deeper than the prairie itself. I put the truck in gear. I'm sorry. I eased onto the highway. She never chased me. She never shouted again. In my mirror, she simply stood beside the shoulder, perfectly still until darkness swallowed her. I drove another 100 miles without stopping. After sunrise, I called the state police and reported everything. An officer met me at the next truck stop. They searched the area where I'd described. They found an abandoned sedan with its driver's door open. No signs of a struggle, no footprints, no missing woman, no reports of anyone stranded. The officer politely suggested exhaustion might explain what I'd experienced. Before leaving, I handed him the inspection ticket. He unfolded it. This is blank. I took it back. Every word had disappeared. No date, no warnings, nothing but clean white paper. I still keep that sheet folded inside my permit book. Every few months I unfold it, expecting to see writing return. It never does. But whenever I haul through eastern Montana after dark, my GPS always loses signal for a few seconds at the same exit. And every time it reconnects, it briefly labels that stretch of road with one destination. Next way station, tomorrow. I've been driving long haul for almost 12 years, and in all that time, I thought I understood every way a load could go wrong. Flat tires, blown transmissions, bad weather, cargo claims. You learn to expect problems. What I never expected was to keep finding a security seal on my trailer that I knew I hadn't put there. The first time it happened, I assumed I'd written the number down wrong. By the fourth time, my company was threatening disciplinary action because every inspection showed a different serialized seal than the one listed on the bill of lading. The strange part wasn't that the seal changed. It was that there wasn't a single scratch on the locking mechanism. I was hauling nearly $2 million worth of consumer electronics from California to a distribution center outside Joliet, Illinois. Loads like that are tracked constantly. Every seal number is logged before departure, and every stop requires another inspection. If that seal changes, someone should have cut it off. Mine looked factory fresh every single time. The dispatcher, Rick, called while I was fueling outside Barstow. Emmanuel, this is getting serious. I know what the paperwork is. The paperwork isn't the problem. Security thinks you're replacing them. Why would I replace a seal and leave every pallet untouched? Silence. I don't know, he admitted, but somebody is. I bought a pack of bright orange tamper stickers from a truck stop and placed them around the trailer doors before leaving. Cheap insurance. If anyone opened those doors, they'd tear instantly. 6 hours later, I stopped for my required inspection outside Flagstaff. Every sticker was still perfect. The seal had changed again. I stood there with my flashlight aimed at the lock for nearly a minute, trying to convince myself I had mixed up the numbers. I hadn't. I called Rick again. They're replacing it without opening the trailer. That's impossible, I agree. The company requested surveillance footage from the truck stop. 3 days later, their security department called me back. We watched everything and no one goes near your trailer. Then how? We don't know. That answer bothered me more than if they'd caught someone. On my next run, I started checking the trailer every chance I got. Every fuel stop, every bathroom break, every way station. Nothing looked disturbed. Still, the seal never stayed the same. Then something else appeared. Mud. Not outside, inside. I opened the trailer during a daylight inspection in New Mexico. Fresh boot prints stretched across the clean aluminum floor between wrapped pallets. Only 6 or 7 prints. Dark brown mud, still damp. There hadn't been rain anywhere I'd driven. I climbed inside with my flashlight. The pallets were untouched. The shrink wrap hadn't been cut. No missing boxes, no broken straps, only footprints. I followed them halfway down before they disappeared completely. Not faded, gone, like whoever left them had simply stopped existing. I photographed everything. The company accused me of staging it. You expect us to believe someone climbed inside, walked 10 feet, then vanished? I don't expect you to believe anything. You've got to give us something we can explain. I couldn't. After that trip, I spent almost $500 on hidden battery-powered cameras. One pointed toward the rear doors, another faced the center aisle, a third watched the nose of the trailer. Motion-activated, infrared, independent memory cards. If somebody entered, I'd finally know. Crossing into Oklahoma, I parked at a large truck stop filled with at least 100 rigs. I checked the cameras before going to sleep. All 3 had full batteries. Everything worked. I woke naturally at sunrise. The trailer seal was different. Again, my hands actually shook while removing the cameras. Back in the cab, I reviewed the footage. Everything looked normal until exactly 2:43 a.m. Without warning. Static, gray television snow. No sound, no image, nothing. At exactly 3 a.m., all 3 cameras returned to normal. 17 minutes, every camera. Same interruption. I checked my truck's electronic logs. At 2:43 a.m., the GPS had lost satellite connection. Restored. Exactly 17 minutes later. I repeated the experiment the following night. Same result. Different state, different truck stop. Same 17 missing minutes. I contacted the camera manufacturer, convinced the devices were defective. They couldn't explain synchronized failures across independent units. My GPS provider couldn't explain the signal losses either. One technician actually laughed. "Maybe aliens?" he joked. I didn't laugh. I started setting alarms for 2:35 every morning. Coffee, windows down, lights off. I forced myself to stay awake. At 2:43, nothing happened. Trucks idled around me. Drivers came and went. Wind rattled loose trailer doors somewhere across the lot. My trailer never moved. At exactly 3 o'clock, I stepped outside. The seal had already changed. I hadn't looked away for more than a few seconds. I stood there listening. Diesel engines, air brakes hissing, the distant buzz of highway traffic. Nothing near my trailer, no footsteps, no voices, no doors closing. Only a strange silence around my own truck, as though sound itself avoided it. This time I broke company policy. I cut the seal. The trailer doors groaned open. Cold air drifted out, carrying the smell of wet earth. The cargo had changed. Every pallet remained inside. Nothing stolen, but someone had shifted them just enough to create a narrow walkway running perfectly down the middle, straight toward the front wall. I shined my flashlight down the passage. Fresh, muddy boot prints started at the doors. One after another. Perfect impressions. They continued toward the front. I walked slowly, my breathing louder than the refrigeration units outside. The beam reached the nose of the trailer. Nothing, no person, no opening, just solid aluminum. I looked down. The footprints ended inches from the wall. There were no prints leading back. I stayed there long enough to hear something. A single, dull knock. Not outside. Inside the wall. Directly in front of me. One knock, then another. Slow. Measured. As if someone stood on the other side, deciding whether I should hear them. I backed away without taking my eyes off that wall. When I reached the doors, I climbed out, shut them, and locked everything before calling the police. They searched the trailer. Nothing, no hidden compartments, no evidence anyone had been inside. By morning, the footprints had dried into ordinary dust and crumbled apart beneath their boots. The investigating officer quietly pulled me aside before leaving. I've never seen tracks with no return path. Neither had I. I refused another electronics load after that. The company eventually transferred me to regional routes. Months later, one of their corporate investigators asked me to meet him privately. He placed a stack of old shipping records across the table. I probably shouldn't be showing you these. Every mysterious seal number I documented appeared in those files. Different companies, different decades, different states. Everyone belonged to a shipment connected to a driver who disappeared without explanation sometime during the past 20 years. None of those loads were ever recovered. The investigator leaned closer. "You know what's bothering us?" "What?" "Those seal numbers were retired after each disappearance." He slid the papers back into the folder. "No one should still have them. I left trucking the following spring. Every now and then I still wake up around 2:43 and instinctively check the clock. Before I remember, I don't drive anymore. A few months ago, while fueling my pickup, I noticed a refrigerated trailer parked 2 pumps over. The driver was inside paying for coffee. His trailer carried a bright yellow security seal. The number printed on it was one I recognized immediately. I'd written it in my logbook years earlier. The morning after, it had mysteriously replaced my own. I spend most nights chasing the white lines across Nevada, so unusual things usually have a simple explanation. A blown tire, a stranded motorist, a dust storm swallowing the road. The only night I couldn't explain happened at a rest area off Interstate 80, where every truck kept its engine idling until sunrise. I watched dozens of exhaust stacks breathing into the cold desert air, yet nobody stepped outside. No doors opened, no radios played. By morning, half the trucks had disappeared, but I never heard a single one leave. My electronic logbook forced me to stop. I had 11 minutes left on my driving clock when the blue highway sign pointed toward the government rest area. The lot was nearly full. Headlights glowed through thin sheets of dust, and diesel engines hummed together like one enormous machine. I squeezed my rig into the last open space near the back fence. The silence hit me the second I opened my door. With that many truckers parked for the night, There should have been footsteps, conversations, someone checking straps or walking a dog. Instead, the only sound was engines idling beneath tall floodlights that buzzed faintly overhead. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the restroom. Inside, an older driver stood washing already clean hands. His eyes stayed locked on the mirror. "You stopping here?" he asked. "Don't have much choice." He dried his hands slowly. "Then don't fall asleep." I laughed, expecting him to smile. He didn't. "What happens if I do?" He looked toward the ceiling instead of at me. I never asked. Then he walked out without another word. Back in my sleeper cab, I made coffee, stronger than I normally could stomach. Midnight passed. My eyelids felt heavy, but I kept scrolling through podcasts and weather reports. Something kept pulling my attention toward the windshield. At the edge of the floodlights, where the darkness swallowed the desert, shapes seemed to move between parked trailers, never close enough to identify, never still long enough to focus on. Around 1 a.m, the headlights on a blue Freightliner across the lot suddenly switched off. Its engine kept idling. I looked down for maybe 3 seconds to refill my mug. When I looked back, the truck wasn't there. No reverse lights, no air brakes, no engine pulling away. The parking space sat empty. I climbed into my driver's seat and scanned every exit. Nothing moved. An hour later, another truck went dark. Again, it simply wasn't there afterward. I cracked my window listening for tires on pavement. Only the endless chorus of idling engines answered. By 3, my CB radio exploded with static. "Anybody hear that?" Another voice answered immediately. "You got knocking too?" Someone farther away whispered. "Under the trailer." "Don't look." The transmission dissolved into crackling. I grabbed the microphone. "What kind of knocking?" No reply. Then 3 slow thumps echoed beneath my cab. Thunk, thunk, thunk. I told myself it had to be cooling metal, wind, anything. The sound came again, this time directly beneath the trailer. Every instinct said stay inside. Instead, I reached for my flashlight. I wish I hadn't. The gravel under my trailer looked untouched. No footprints, no animal tracks, just pale stones reflecting my light. I crawled farther beneath the frame until I was almost centered under the empty trailer I'd been hauling all day. Nothing. I exhaled. Then something struck once from inside the trailer directly above me. Not the roof, not the walls, the floor. One heavy impact, close enough the dust sifted through the wooden slats onto my face. I scrambled backward so fast my shoulders scraped the axle. The trailer seal was still intact. Nobody could have climbed inside without breaking it. Another single impact shook the floor overhead. I didn't wait for a third. I threw myself into the cab, locked every door, and started rolling before my logbook, common sense, or the law had any chance to object. As I reached the interstate, dawn finally began pushing gray light across the desert. In my mirrors, the rest area looked exactly as I'd left it. Engines still idling, floodlights still glowing. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove that route again. The entrance had been blocked with concrete barriers. A state sign read, "Rest area closed, structural issues." An older maintenance worker was loading equipment into a pickup nearby. I asked what happened. He stared at the empty lot for several seconds before answering. "You ever stay there overnight?" I nodded. He sighed. "We replaced cameras 3 different times. Every year the count was wrong." "What count?" "More trucks arrived than left." I waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. He closed his tailgate. We checked every exit camera for miles. State police looked. Nobody could explain it. I asked how many trucks were missing. He shook his head. "They stopped keeping the number. Sometimes I still wake up hearing engines that never shut off. And whenever I haul an empty trailer through Nevada at night, I never need to wonder what's inside. I only wonder if something is waiting for me to park." I've hauled freight across the US and Canada long enough to know that truckers eventually collect stories nobody believes. Mine started during my first winter run through northern Alberta, when I was still new enough to think GPS knew every road worth knowing. The storm arrived faster than the forecast promised. 1 minute I could see the highway markers, the next they vanished behind a wall of blowing snow. My fuel gauge dipped below a quarter tank, and every radio station dissolved into static. Then, through the trees, I spotted a glowing fuel station tucked behind snow-covered pines. It wasn't on my map, but the canopy lights were on, and several semis were parked outside. Something felt wrong before I even stepped out. Every truck looked ancient. Long nose rigs with faded paint, rusted bumpers, and company logos I'd never seen before. One trailer still carried the name Northern Prairie Freight in cracked blue letters. Another belonged to Arctic Western Transport. They looked like museum pieces. Still, every engine ticked with fresh warmth. The station smelled of old coffee and diesel. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. 3 employees stood behind the counter wearing matching red uniforms. They smiled when I entered. None of them blinked. "You made it just in time," the cashier said, sliding me a steaming mug before I ordered. "Best stay until sunrise. I've got a delivery. The road isn't safe for travelers tonight." The other 2 employees nodded without looking at me. Their eyes stayed fixed somewhere past my shoulder, as if watching someone standing behind me. I glanced around for another customer. There wasn't one. Near the coffee station hung a calendar advertising a tire company. December 1994. I assumed it was decoration until I noticed the newspaper beside the register. Its date matched. I asked the cashier if it was some kind of roadside theme. He only smiled. Outside, the wind had eased enough for me to leave. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and pulled onto the snow-covered access road. 5 minutes later, the same fuel station appeared ahead. I stopped, backed up, and tried another direction. Again, the station emerged through the trees. A third attempt ended exactly the same. The building waited under its glowing canopy like it had never moved. My GPS displayed a straight highway stretching north, but my windshield kept finding the same pumps. I parked farther away this time and walked among the old rigs. Their windows were covered with frost. Curiosity got the better of me. I wiped a circle clear on the nearest driver's window. Someone sat inside. A man in a denim jacket. His hands gripped the steering wheel. His eyes stared through the windshield. Ice crystals covered his beard. He looked less like a body and more like someone waiting for traffic to move again. Every truck held another driver. Men, one woman, different ages, all sitting perfectly upright. None looked disturbed, just waiting. I backed away so quickly I slipped into a snowbank. When I reached the station door again, one of the attendants was already holding it open. "I told you," he said quietly. "You shouldn't wander. Those people, they chose to leave." His expression never changed. "They're still waiting for the road." I stayed inside because I honestly didn't know where else to go. The coffee never cooled. The wall clock barely seemed to move. Every few minutes, one employee would glance toward the dark highway, as if expecting company. Then hours later, every light inside flickered. One attendant whispered, "They're early." Another hurried to lock the front doors. For the first time since I'd arrived, they looked frightened. Far beyond the pumps, dozens of headlights appeared through the blizzard, not scattered, perfectly aligned. An enormous convoy. The beams never swayed with the wind. They floated silently toward the station. No engine noise, no air brakes, just white lights growing larger. The attendants pulled every curtain shut. "Stay away from the windows." "What is that?" I asked. Nobody answered. The front door rattled once, not from wind, from something pressing against it. The cashier finally looked directly into my eyes. "If they see you inside, you stay with us." That sentence finally broke whatever hesitation I had left. While they crowded the entrance, I slipped through a rear maintenance door that someone hadn't latched completely. The cold hit like a wall. I sprinted toward my truck, expecting the snow to swallow me. The engine fired immediately. I shoved the transmission into gear and drove without looking back. This time the road didn't loop. The station disappeared into the storm behind me. When daylight finally reached the highway, there was nothing but forest where I'd entered the access road. No driveway, no tire tracks, nothing. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched old newspaper archives at a library back home. One article stopped me cold. In January 1994, an isolated truck stop north of the route I'd driven had burned during a severe winter storm. Every employee died inside. Several stranded truckers never escaped their parked rigs. The station had been abandoned ever since. One grainy photograph showed firefighters standing beneath the fuel canopy. The cashier who handed me coffee stood in the background. Same uniform, same smile, same face. The article identified him by name, dead at 32. Sometimes I still haul loads into Canada. Every winter, my GPS briefly loses signal along that stretch of highway. For a few seconds before the map corrects itself, one unlabeled side road appears where no road should exist. And every single time, my truck's outside thermometer climbs, as though somewhere beyond those snow-covered pines, a line of old diesel engines is still warm.